June 1994 marked the start of one of the most closely watched criminal cases in U.S. history. O.J. Simpson was accused of murder, and the trial that followed would hold the nation's attention for over a year. He married Marguerite Whitley in the late 1960s, and the couple had 3 children together, navigating the challenges of family life while living under the public eye. Even as Simpson enjoyed the perks of fame, luxury cars, lavish parties, and exclusive Hollywood circles, he faced the pressures of maintaining his image while balancing personal happiness. His charm and affable nature made him appear invincible to the outside world, but the constant glare of fame would inevitably complicate private matters. In the early 1980s, O.J. Simpson's life was filled with fame, fortune, and the constant glow of public admiration. Amid this whirlwind, he met Nicole Brown, a young woman whose charm and beauty captured his attention. Nicole, who had a modest upbringing and worked as a waitress, was drawn to Simpson's charisma, athletic fame, and magnetic presence. Their meeting seemed at first like a classic Hollywood romance, a celebrated sports star and a stunning young woman crossing paths in the bustling world of Los Angeles. Their courtship progressed quickly, and soon O.J. and Nicole were married. The union produced 2 children, Sydney and Justin, who would become central to both their joy and their struggles. For a time, the marriage appeared picture-perfect. Simpson, the celebrated celebrity, and Nicole, the graceful partner supporting him in public appearances, parties, and social gatherings. Fans admired them as a glamorous couple, and the media portrayed their life together as a symbol of success, beauty, and family. Yet behind the smiles and public appearances, cracks were beginning to form. As the years passed, the relationship between O.J. and Nicole became increasingly strained. Accounts later revealed that their marriage was marred by conflict and tension, often escalating into domestic abuse. Police reports and witness testimonies would eventually document incidents in which Simpson allegedly threatened or harmed Nicole, highlighting a troubling pattern that contrasted sharply with his polished public persona. Friends and family members observed arguments, volatile behavior, and periods of fear, creating an environment where the home life was far from the image the public had come to admire. Despite the troubling incidents, Nicole remained committed to the marriage for several years, often prioritizing her children's well-being and the hope that Simpson could change. However, the cycle of abuse and reconciliation eventually became unsustainable. Nicole's courage and growing awareness of the danger led her to seek legal protection, resulting in police involvement and official records documenting the conflict. The situation underscored the stark contrast between O.J.'s celebrity image and the reality of his private life, a reality that few in the public sphere could see or understand at the time. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the marriage was irreparably fractured. Nicole made the difficult decision to divorce Simpson, seeking independence and safety for herself and her children. The legal proceedings were tense, highly publicized, and emotionally charged, drawing national attention to what had previously been a private struggle. The aftermath of the divorce left a complex legacy. Simpson continued his career in entertainment and sports, but the personal turmoil and public scrutiny began to shadow his otherwise celebrated life. For Nicole, the divorce marked both an escape from an abusive relationship and the beginning of a new chapter, though the scars of her experiences remain. June 12, 1994, began as an ordinary summer day in Los Angeles, but by nightfall, it would become one of the darkest in the city's recent history. Nicole Brown Simpson, the ex-wife of O.J. Simpson, spent the day attending personal errands and preparing for a quiet evening at home. Nearby, Ron Goldman, a young man known for his work at a local restaurant and for his kind and friendly nature, was wrapping up his day. Neither could have anticipated that their lives were about to be tragically cut short. That evening, Nicole and Ron were at her Brentwood residence, a location that would later become infamous. Around 10:15 p.m., neighbors heard unusual noises and saw activity that immediately seemed out of the ordinary. Concerned, some even attempted to reach out. But before help could arrive, both Nicole and Ron had suffered a fatal attack inside the home. The scene that awaited the first responding officers was harrowing. 2 victims had been found, both with multiple injuries consistent with a violent assault. Police quickly cordoned off the residence and began a methodical investigation. Crime scene investigators moved carefully, documenting every detail of the home and surrounding area. They collected evidence that would later become central to the case, including personal belongings, traces of blood, and other forensic clues. Witnesses in the neighborhood reported seeing unusual comings and goings earlier in the evening, which helped the investigators begin piecing together a timeline of events. By reconstructing the hours leading up to the attack, law enforcement determined that Nicole and Ron had been together at her home, likely engaged in casual conversation, when the perpetrator entered the scene. The violent nature of the incident left both victims with multiple injuries, and the immediate conclusion was clear. This was a deliberate and aggressive act. The brutality of the attack shocked the community and sent ripples of fear throughout Los Angeles. Initial police investigations focused on understanding the relationships and motives surrounding Nicole and Ron. Officers interviewed family members, friends, and acquaintances, aiming to identify anyone who might have harbored resentment or conflict. O.J. Simpson, Nicole's ex-husband, quickly became a person of interest due to the history of their tumultuous relationship and previous reports of domestic issues. The intense media attention that followed only heightened public scrutiny as newspapers and television networks detailed every known aspect of the victims' lives, the crime scene, and potential suspects. The aftermath of the discovery highlighted the sheer violence of the night. Nicole Brown Simpson, once a familiar and admired figure, and Ron Goldman, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, had been brutally murdered. The crime scene revealed the extent of the attack, leaving investigators and the public alike grappling with the shocking reality of what had occurred. For law enforcement, the focus was clear: gather evidence, reconstruct the sequence of events, and identify the individual responsible for this horrifying act. June 12, 1994, would forever be remembered as the night when two innocent lives were violently taken in Brentwood. The discovery at Nicole's residence sparked a nationwide investigation, one that would captivate the public, dominate headlines, and eventually lead to one of the most famous criminal trials in American history. The day after the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, law enforcement moved quickly to gather evidence and question those closest to the victims. O.J. Simpson, the former football star and Nicole's ex-husband, became a central figure in the investigation almost immediately. Police sought to speak with him regarding his whereabouts on the night of June 12th, and early reports highlighted an injury on his hand, a deep cut that raised suspicion about his involvement in the violent events at Nicole's residence. Investigators executed search warrants at Simpson's various properties, carefully collecting evidence that included clothing, personal items, and forensic samples. Each item was cataloged meticulously as detectives worked to reconstruct the timeline of the night in question. The investigation was unprecedented in scope, not only because of the high-profile nature of the suspect, but also due to the shocking violence that had occurred. The public watched closely, eager for any updates about the former NFL star, who had once been celebrated as a national icon. Tensions escalated dramatically when O.J. Simpson failed to turn himself in as ordered by the authorities. Instead of surrendering to police, Simpson's absence set the stage for one of the most memorable moments in American media history. On June 17, 1994, a low-speed pursuit unfolded across the streets of Los Angeles, with Simpson inside a white Ford Bronco, accompanied by his friend Al Cowlings. The vehicle weaved through freeways while a convoy of police cars followed closely behind. Helicopters hovered above, broadcasting live images of the chase to millions of viewers across the nation. What should have been a routine surrender became an extraordinary spectacle. Families watched in disbelief as television networks provided continuous coverage, turning the pursuit into a collective national event. Viewers observed the tense standoff, the slow movement of the Bronco, and the reactions of law enforcement officers coordinating the chase from the ground. The surreal nature of the event, combining celebrity, crime, and live media coverage, captured the attention of the country in a way few stories ever had. The chase ended at Simpson's Brentwood estate, where he finally emerged from the vehicle. Armed with a sense of defiance and accompanied by police negotiators, he surrendered peacefully, but the impact of the chase had already cemented itself in public memory. The footage of the white Bronco weaving through Los Angeles freeways became a symbol of the tension, drama, and celebrity culture intertwined with the investigation. Following the surrender, the national media frenzy intensified. Every aspect of Simpson's life, the evidence collected, and the ongoing legal proceedings were scrutinized in newspapers, television broadcasts, and magazines. Experts debated the significance of the cut on his hand, the items found during the searches, and the implications of his delayed surrender. Public fascination grew as millions were drawn into the unfolding drama, blurring the line between crime reporting and entertainment. When O.J. Simpson officially entered the courtroom, the nation watched with a mix of anticipation and disbelief. The case had already dominated headlines, but the formal start of the trial turned it into a spectacle unlike any other in American legal history. Selecting the jury was the first critical step, and attorneys on both sides knew that the composition of the panel could ultimately decide the outcome. Careful questioning of prospective jurors revealed a wide spectrum of opinions and potential biases, reflecting the intense media coverage and public fascination surrounding the case. Simpson's defense team, soon nicknamed the Dream Team, was composed of some of the most prominent and skilled lawyers in the country. Johnny Cochran, known for his courtroom charisma and ability to connect with juries, led the team alongside Robert Shapiro, a high-profile litigator with experience in celebrity cases. Robert Kardashian, Simpson's longtime friend, provided personal insight and support, while F. Lee Bailey, a seasoned trial attorney, brought decades of experience to the strategy. Together, they represented a formidable force, confident in their ability to challenge the prosecution at every turn. On the other side, the prosecution was led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, both dedicated attorneys determined to present a compelling case. Clark, a sharp and meticulous legal mind, managed the complex presentation of evidence, while Darden, known for his passion and courtroom presence, confronted Simpson's defense with pointed questions and arguments. The prosecutors faced the challenging task of proving their case in a courtroom filled with cameras, reporters, and intense public scrutiny. Every piece of testimony, every item of evidence, and every witness would be analyzed not only by the jury, but by millions of Americans following the trial at home. The courtroom itself became a stage, with Simpson at the center, navigating the pressures of being both defendant and national figure. The media's presence was unprecedented. Live broadcasts, rolling news coverage, and round-the-clock analysis ensured that no detail went unnoticed. The public was captivated, following the trial as if it were a drama unfolding in real time. Simpson's celebrity status only amplified the spectacle, as viewers debated his guilt or innocence, discussed his defense strategies, and scrutinized the behavior of lawyers, witnesses, and jurors alike. From the first day, it was clear that this trial was more than a legal proceeding. It was a cultural phenomenon. Discussions in homes, offices, and classrooms across the country centered on the courtroom drama, the personalities involved, and the high stakes of the case. The combination of fame, tragedy, and legal intrigue created a story that gripped the nation, drawing attention from people who might otherwise have had little interest in the judicial system. As the trial progressed, it became evident that every argument, every cross-examination, and every piece of evidence would be magnified through the lens of public attention. The story of O.J. Simpson, once celebrated for his athletic achievements and media presence, was now defined by one of the most closely followed trials in history. As the trial of O.J. Simpson unfolded, the courtroom became a stage for a clash not just of lawyers, but of science, strategy, and public perception. One of the most talked about aspects of the case was the introduction of DNA evidence, which at the time was still relatively new in criminal trials. Forensic experts presented samples collected from the crime scene, including blood found at the residence and on Simpson's personal items. The technology was groundbreaking, demonstrating the ability to match genetic material with extraordinary accuracy, and it quickly became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Among the physical evidence, one item drew particular attention: a leather glove discovered near the property. The prosecution claimed it belonged to Simpson, linking him directly to the crime scene. When Simpson tried on the glove during a dramatic courtroom moment, it appeared not to fit, a point the defense highlighted repeatedly. This moment became iconic, symbolizing both the strength and the unpredictability of the trial. The image of Simpson struggling to pull the glove onto his hand was replayed endlessly in the media, fueling debate and speculation across the nation. Another piece of evidence that captured attention was a pair of distinctive Bruno Magli shoes. Footprints matching the design of these high-end shoes were found near the scene, creating another connection that the prosecution argued tied Simpson to the events of that night. The defense, however, challenged both the handling of the evidence and the conclusions drawn, arguing that assumptions had been made too quickly and that alternate explanations were possible. Each detail became a point of contention, magnified under the relentless gaze of the press. Central to the defense's strategy was the claim of police misconduct. They argued that the Los Angeles Police Department mishandled evidence, manipulated procedures, and even planted items to frame Simpson. Questions were raised about how evidence was collected, transported, and stored, and whether proper protocols had been followed. The defense portrayed Simpson as a victim of a system willing to bend rules in the pursuit of a high-profile conviction. These arguments resonated with many observers and became a defining feature of the trial, shifting some focus away from the evidence itself and toward questions of fairness, bias, and integrity in law enforcement. The media amplified every nuance of these controversies, turning complex forensic discussions into public spectacle. Analysts debated the implications of DNA technology, while commentators dissected courtroom theatrics and legal strategies. The combination of scientific breakthroughs, dramatic demonstrations, and allegations of misconduct created a story that fascinated the nation and kept viewers engrossed day after day. Throughout the trial, the tension between the evidence and the narratives constructed around it highlighted the unique challenges of this case. On one side were the objective findings of forensic science, meticulously documented and presented by experts. On the other were narratives of error, bias, and suspicion, skillfully woven by the defense to cast doubt. The interplay between these elements not only defined the courtroom drama, but also made the case a cultural touchstone, sparking discussions about justice, celebrity, and the evolving role of science in the legal system. The O.J. Simpson trial was never just a courtroom event. It became a mirror reflecting deep societal tensions in America. Race quickly emerged as a central factor, influencing how the trial was perceived and debated across the nation. Simpson, a black man and former sports icon, faced not only the legal scrutiny of the court, but also the lens of a country grappling with issues of racial inequality, policing, and systemic bias. For many African Americans, Simpson's defense team's claims of police misconduct resonated with long-standing concerns about law enforcement's treatment of black communities. Meanwhile, others viewed the case through the prism of the victims' identities, highlighting the complexity of how race shaped public perceptions and interpretations of guilt or innocence. The media played a defining role in amplifying these debates. From cable news to print journalism, every detail of the trial was broadcast, analyzed, and sensationalized. Networks aired live coverage of courtroom proceedings, replays of dramatic moments, and commentary from legal and cultural experts. The spectacle transformed the trial into a national obsession, with some audiences more focused on the personalities and theatrics than on the evidence itself. Talk shows, opinion columns, and televised panel discussions turned Simpson's case into a cultural conversation where issues of race, celebrity, and justice collided in real time. Public opinion reflected the profound divisions within the country. Polls conducted during the trial revealed stark differences in how various communities interpreted the proceedings and the evidence. Many Black Americans expressed skepticism about the investigation and police conduct, citing historical patterns of bias and injustice. At the same time, significant segments of white America emphasized the physical evidence presented by the prosecution, viewing Simpson as guilty based on the forensic and circumstantial details. This division made it clear that the trial was not just a legal matter, but also a symbol of broader social tensions. The intersection of celebrity and race further complicated public discourse. Simpson's fame meant that his trial was not only about a criminal case, but also about a public figure whose life had been celebrated and scrutinized for decades. Discussions about his guilt or innocence were intertwined with debates about how the justice system treats those in the public eye versus ordinary citizens. The case forced Americans to confront uncomfortable questions. How does fame affect accountability? How do race and social standing influence the perception of evidence and the administration of justice? At the same time, the trial sparked a national conversation about inequality, systemic flaws, and the role of media in shaping narratives. Every headline, televised clip, and editorial contributed to a climate where legal proceedings were inseparable from social commentary. The Simpson trial became a prism through which broader issues, race, justice, media influence, and celebrity were refracted, compelling millions of Americans to examine their assumptions and biases. After months of testimony, evidence, and courtroom drama, the O.J. Simpson trial reached its climactic conclusion. As the jury began deliberations, the nation waited with bated breath. Television networks, newspapers, and radio stations provided continuous updates, turning what was normally a private process into a public spectacle. Millions of Americans followed the deliberations closely, debating among themselves what the verdict might be and reflecting on the social, racial, and cultural implications of the trial. For many, the anticipation felt almost unbearable, as the case had already become more than a legal matter. It was a cultural phenomenon that captivated the entire country. Finally, on October 3rd, 1995, the verdict was announced. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty of the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The courtroom erupted with emotion, a mixture of relief, shock, and disbelief. Simpson, appearing calm and composed, embraced friends and family, while the reactions outside the courthouse and across the nation reflected the deep divisions that had become apparent throughout the trial. Some celebrated the verdict, believing justice had been served and that Simpson had been wrongfully accused. Others were stunned and angered, convinced that the evidence had been compelling enough to warrant a guilty verdict. The announcement of the verdict sparked immediate and widespread discussion. Public squares, workplaces, and homes became arenas for debate about the trial's outcome, the role of race, the influence of celebrity, and the effectiveness of the legal system. Analysts dissected every aspect of the trial, from the presentation of evidence to the courtroom theatrics, and conversations about justice, fairness, and societal bias filled news cycles for weeks afterward. The verdict of October 3rd, 1995, marked a pivotal moment in American history. Beyond the legal result, it revealed the power of media, the influence of public opinion, and the complexities of a case that touched on celebrity, race, and law in unprecedented ways. For O.J. Simpson, the not guilty verdict concluded a dramatic chapter in his life, but the public fascination and debate surrounding the trial would continue for decades. The criminal trial of O.J. Simpson concluded in 1995 with a not guilty verdict, but the story did not end there. The families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman sought justice through a civil trial, aiming to hold Simpson accountable for the deaths of their loved ones. In 1997, the civil proceedings began, operating under a lower burden of proof than the criminal case. This time, the focus was on liability rather than criminal guilt, and the court carefully examined the evidence that had previously captivated the nation. During the civil trial, the families presented compelling arguments, drawing on the same evidence that had been debated in the criminal trial: forensic samples, witness accounts, and Simpson's history of contentious behavior. The defense attempted to challenge these points again, but the context of a civil trial shifted the dynamics. On February 5th, 1997, the jury reached a verdict. O.J. Simpson was found liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages, a staggering sum that underscored the seriousness of the case and the court's determination to provide some measure of accountability for the families. For Nicole and Ron's families, the civil trial represented both closure and an ongoing struggle for justice. While no amount of money could replace the lives of their loved ones, the verdict offered legal acknowledgement of their loss and an affirmation that their fight had not been in vain. Public attention remained intense as the nation reflected on the contrast between the criminal and civil outcomes, and discussions about fairness, accountability, and the legal system continued. The civil verdict also highlighted the complexities of the American justice system, where one individual could be acquitted in a criminal court but still held responsible in a civil proceeding. Meanwhile, O.J. Simpson's life post-trial continued under a bright, often unforgiving spotlight. He engaged in book deals, interviews, and media appearances, sharing his perspective on the events and attempting to reshape his public image. Some viewed these endeavors as bold attempts at transparency, while others criticized them as controversial or opportunistic. Simpson's personal and professional life became a subject of ongoing debate as he navigated the consequences of his notoriety and the public's continued fascination with his story. In the years following the murder trial, Simpson faced several minor legal issues, including disputes related to finances, personal conduct, and civil judgments. While these incidents did not approach the scale of his earlier notoriety, they contributed to a growing sense that Simpson's life was increasingly unstable. His civil liability for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman meant that financial pressures compounded his personal challenges, and public attention never waned. Each appearance, statement, and activity was met with scrutiny, leaving Simpson with little room for privacy. The most significant legal crisis came in 2007, when Simpson became involved in an armed robbery case in Las Vegas. Simpson and a group of associates entered a hotel room to confront sports memorabilia dealers, attempting to recover items Simpson claimed were his property. The situation quickly escalated, resulting in the arrest of Simpson and his co-defendants on charges including armed robbery, kidnapping, and assault. The case shocked the nation, not only because of the serious nature of the charges, but also because Simpson's prior fame made the story impossible to ignore. The public watched intently, eager to see how one of America's most notorious figures would navigate yet another legal battle. In 2008, Simpson's trial concluded with a conviction on multiple charges, including armed robbery and kidnapping. The court handed down a lengthy prison sentence, marking a dramatic reversal in his fortunes. Simpson, once celebrated for his athletic achievements and charismatic personality, now faced the stark reality of incarceration. The conviction underscored that fame could not shield him from accountability, and the images of the former football star behind bars were widely circulated in the media. This chapter of Simpson's life reinforced the notion that the consequences of legal decisions can be long-lasting, regardless of public acclaim or celebrity status. Simpson served his sentence at the Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada, where he spent nearly a decade in confinement. During this period, he largely withdrew from public life, occasionally making headlines for appeals or legal motions. In 2017, Simpson was granted parole and released from prison after serving 9 years. His release was met with a mixture of reactions. Some viewed it as a chance for rehabilitation and reintegration, while others recalled his past controversies and remained skeptical about his public presence. The story of O.J. Simpson's downfall illustrates a dramatic arc from fame and acclaim to legal consequences and imprisonment. His post-trial legal troubles, culminating in the Las Vegas armed robbery case, demonstrated that even the most prominent public figures are not immune to the law. Simpson's journey from athletic hero to convicted felon remains a compelling narrative, marked by both public fascination and cautionary lessons about fame, accountability, and personal choices.